Yeah, so here we are at CDAC meeting. Let's open up with, okay, first the review of previous minutes. I don't believe we have anything, so we'll pass on that.
Yep.
Come back, and then how
Mr.
about we
Chair,
jump,
if you
sorry.
Just let everybody know that we're being recorded.
Okay.
And then it's being carried live for cable access, and then if anybody's recording.
Okay. Yeah, just let everyone know. We're being recorded, live. Anybody else recording, just let me know.
Anybody has questions, they can just let us
Yeah.
know, right?
All right, let's dive right in. Master plan. Take it away.
Sorry, John. I was so caught up in the drama. Do you know how to get the Dropbox link up to this computer?
From yours?
From that one?
so. I think I can just go
So
on
everybody
my
can see
email.
it?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Or do you send it to me on Teams, or do you?
Yes, but you could also go to warrenmasterplan.com under Document Library, July 2024. But yes, does everybody know Jordan?
Oh, Jordan. Yeah, we
Hey,
got-
yeah, I think I've
Met a couple
I think I've met you all,
times.
but
Yeah.
it's been
Yeah.
I have not been around as much as Sarah, so it's good to see you all.
So we brought
Yeah.
Jordan today to talk about housing. He's going to be writing the housing chapter.
Okay.
So in the materials that we'll bring up here, but also have access to, we have some key findings and draft strategies.
Okay.
The purpose of today, I hope, is to kind of run things by the committee as, does this work for Warren, does this not work for Warren? Have you tried this, it didn't work, things like that. Are there things we're not thinking of? And to make sure our key findings are also on point with what the committee thinks are the key findings for housing. But first, I have a little bit of a draft vision statement too, based on our discussion last month. And then Jordan and our other colleague Victoria kind of beautified it,
Mhm.
made it flow. So, sorry Jim to task you with this in this chapter. But if you could scroll a little down to see the full vision statement.
There you go.
And I could give everybody a second to read it and we could discuss any changes that would work.
Okay.
Okay. Rich history. The town is natural.
Modern opportunity. Modern. Our town's natural landscape and scenic zones invite adventure and exploration, creating an environment for new business ventures. Our historic homes.
Halfway to everywhere. We're in a place to grow. Ah, I like it.
I like it, yeah.
I like it a lot.
Strategically located halfway to everywhere. I like that too.
Yeah.
But should we be more specific? If I'm in Timbuktu wanting to buy land in Warren, should I be, I'm just asking,
Yeah.
is strategically located close to Springfield, Worcester, and Hartford, I think those are strategically located.
Because we're between the three
We're
cities.
a three.
We're halfway between all of them.
Strategic, yeah. Three. What are your thoughts on that? I'm just throwing.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, I mean, it's good thinking. I like where your head's at.
Well,
with
that's when I
that,
bought
yeah.
here. That was one of the reasons I bought here, because I'm close to Boston for the hospitals for my late wife, and then close to Hartford for my friend from the NFL, and then close to Six Flags when I was the training director. So that was my rationale.
Yeah.
Is it too wordy though?
I'm trying to think if there's
I would
not really a saying for those three specific cities.
No.
Yeah.
What do you think?
No.
I would say so. This is your plan, so you can do what you want.
No, stop.
It's a little less poetic if you get real specific, and so there's an opportunity in the plan to kind of explain what that means too. Like, remember
Okay.
that kind of community
Got it.
Yeah.
I'm easy.
stuff is.
So yeah, like what you're saying is, in the plan, we can basically describe more of what halfway to everywhere
Right.
means. It means that you're not far from Worcester, not far from Springfield, not far from Hartford,
And
not
not
even far from
Boston, the best hospitals in the world, we're not far from an hour and 10,
No.
15 minutes.
And again, yeah, it would be more descriptive.
Yeah. I
in-
think that's
in the
a
heart
big
of it.
seller, because Warren, where the heck is
Yeah.
that? But if you add those, I'm just saying.
Because I think, yeah, if you keep hitting on that slogan, you're halfway to everywhere, again, and keep bringing it back in the plan and showing how that puts us in a place that's unique. You know, we're an open, inviting community.
Yep.
Ready to accept people from all directions. Because, you know, if you're commuting to Springfield, you're not far away.
Piece of cake.
If you're commuting to Worcester, you're not far away.
Piece of cake.
You know, and again, if you
To
gotta
Hartford,
get in,
it's
if
not
you gotta get into
Hartford's an
Boston
hour.
or Hartford, you go right down 84,
Well,
you're
right
in
there.
Hartford, you jump right on 90,
Yeah.
you're in Boston. So,
We're
yeah.
not, we are, you know,
I can see a good map
Yeah,
of
absolutely.
all those points pinpointed.
for including Boston, because people, you know, like I said, near the best hospitals in the world.
Yeah.
Okay. I like it. Anybody else? Anything? Jim?
Jim? Jim?
Basically, that is that half. It's halfway.
Yeah.
It's,
Yeah?
I agree with that. Having
Okay.
some kind of-
Okay.
Anything else?
What do you think of the vision, Jim?
I thought it was very good, you know, connection
Yeah.
to all locations, you know.
Yeah?
Anything you think is missing?
The Milltown, obviously history, we're a very history-oriented community. Deep
Covered
roots.
the scenic roads.
Yeah, very scenic too,
Super
beautiful
scenic,
mountain
yeah.
hillsides.
What about, one of the points that I wound up here, what about the housing cost is considerably do you think, where housing is very affordable, should that be, because that's what people,
Did you wanna
We have
say?
it in code, basically.
Yeah,
all right, I'm just,
Welcome residents from all walks of life,
yeah.
but we could make it a little bit more.
because what you can get here compared to anywhere is, I'll give you an example, when I moved up here, my house went for $300,000, the same house would have went for, in the Boston area, probably for 800, 900,000, and that's what, so.
And that was then.
That was then.
Now
right,
it's
so
even way
more.
higher.
And the same thing goes on. I just think that's a big bite too.
Yeah.
Housing, I mean, you can get a good house here for a great price.
Yep.
I'm just saying.
Reasonable taxes and,
Yeah.
you know, the town will support you. Good school system, not far away from good hospitals and good cities.
Yes?
Low crime.
Yeah,
Low
very
crime?
low crime.
So, do we want, to go back and we could tweak this a little and come back next month, or nail it down today?
Again, I'm just throwing things as a team here. I just like the fact that, that what attracted me to Warren.
Yeah.
And when my wife saw, we can get this for that, and it's
Yeah.
still going on too. It's amazing. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
What we could do is we could take those comments, put together maybe like 3 options, bring them back next time, and
Okay.
just,
Okay.
you know, something that maybe more explicitly calls out what halfway to everywhere, just so you can see kind
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
what that looks like if you make some of those things more explicit and see what you like best and just pick
Halfway,
one.
maybe halfway between the city and the country, some kind of.
Well,
like a
yeah, I mean,
mix.
you're in the
So
country and
you-
close, again, it'll all come through, and I think when we write the whole chapter out.
Yeah.
It'll explain it more in detail, but like you say, this just wants to give you, you know, the grand vision of
Yeah.
what we're going to discuss.
Again, I'm sorry, I'm tired. How about a slogan is amongst the hills?
Well, that's what we do have that slogan.
And that,
It's on.
No, it's on signs
It's on
in town.
signs.
no, I know that, but what
Yeah,
about
so
here?
we need that in here. for
Yeah,
So we
town
could,
amongst
we
the
could maybe
hills,
slip
that's
it
what I
into
want.
that first sentence,
Yeah.
like a
The
Warren
town
traditional.
amongst the hills,
Yeah.
traditional
I'm usually
mill
not this
town.
smart at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Usually. Yeah,
We
amongst
need
the,
fire.
That's a
that's
good
because
stuff. I like that
that's our
slogan.
branding.
Yeah,
It is, yeah.
We need
Yeah.
that, yeah. So, yeah, we'll come back with all these,
Yeah.
and I like getting it a little more specific, so it doesn't seem like it's a vision statement for any town.
But I don't wanna dumb it down either. I wanna have an impactful vision statement. you
Yeah.
know? A lot of meat to it.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. Cool. Anything else on this before we move to housing?
Education, recreation activities, I mean, it covers pretty much what we're trying to say. So, I think with that, with a few tweaks, I think
Yeah.
we're gonna be that'll be really, really good.
Perfect.
Great.
And maybe next meeting we'll have.
Anything about developable, the land for development in there, in there too?
Mhm.
Multiple acres potentially
Yeah.
for development, for business in housing.
kind of that open for business mentality.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But-
we're open for business, I
Right,
like
I
that,
like-
yeah.
I think that's Maryland's state slogan.
Is it?
I think that's what
I
it-
know, I just think that's also
Ah,
true. If I'm a
Maryland.
contractor or a developer,
Yeah.
a lot of acres here, you
Yeah.
know? If I'm a housing developer, you know, I can build housing.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. I'm just saying.
Endless opportunities.
And it really is.
Endless-
Endless
There is.
opportunities.
Endless opportunities.
like that.
Great. So I can pop
Yeah,
over
should
to
we-
Jordan to go over housing.
Talk housing.
Let's talk housing.
Great. So,
Scroll down.
yeah, and who got a chance to look at this beforehand?
I did. No, whatever.
I don't think I
So
got
ago.
anything.
I didn't get an email.
I didn't get an email at
Okay,
all.
so we'll go through this kind of
Okay.
like, so the way that I kind of laid this out was
Yeah.
really looking at what was coming out of the master plan survey and what came out of the community
Mm-hmm.
workshop, as well as conversations with town staff and volunteers, and trying to narrow that into kind of like high level findings about the town. And so we developed 4 of them, and then under each one of those 4 we have some kind of draft strategies that are kind of the beginnings of what you might call like goals and objectives, maybe even some action items that we might actually put in the plan. So to start out here, I wanted to just include some articulation of kind of where the state is on this on housing, particularly because the state has indicated that they're going to start putting more and more money towards housing kind of across the state. So I just wanted to open it with that recognition that there will likely be some opportunities that we don't know of yet, particularly as it pertains to the Affordable Homes Act, which is kind of being worked on between the House and Senate right now, and in terms of a final version. But there's definitely going to be some money there, and some other impacts to housing across the state. And then I also just included the state's sustainable development principles, because these are things that a lot of grants through the state ask you to speak to. And so housing is one of those, expand housing opportunities. So there could be some opportunities for alignment there with what you may want to do as a town, with some grant funding. But we can kind of scroll through those, and then go to, I think a good place to start is with, there's a map right after this page, I think.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. So I labeled this potential priority housing growth areas, and this really comes out of asking in the survey where people may want additional housing, as well as during the workshop we had kind of a similar question about which areas are appropriate for housing, as well as an activity that tried to get people to wrestle with this idea of kind of open space preservation and kind of where housing is going. So like the idea that denser housing supports more open space preservation, and where do you kind of sit as a town in terms of like what are we willing to build in terms of dense housing to preserve open space. And so what we heard was that there was some willingness to see that trade-off, that people were willing to see a little bit denser housing in kind of the 2 village centers and some of those commercial strips kind of leading in and between the 2 village centers. And so this is kind of what that composite map looks like, just broken down by kind of existing zoning districts. And I guess just initially wanted to get your perspective on kind of how that feels in relation to your conversation with residents, whether you feel like that is kind of aligns with what you're hearing as a town. Obviously this isn't, not everybody is going to agree with that type of strategy. But yeah, anyway, just wanted to get your initial thoughts on that.
Well, I mean, if that's, obviously the survey turned up this is what people are looking for. Of course, that's a small group, there's more.
Mhm.
There's obviously a lot more property in town around the outskirts as opposed to the middle of the town. A lot of our village areas are already developed. I don't know if there's a lot of room to expand off of those. And again, it depends on land ownership, and then the people that own that land, do they want it developed, or they just want to leave it woods or whatever it
Right.
might be.
And the other point I wanna bring up is, in the village areas, does it look, when I'm looking for a house and I see houses on top of one another, like, no land, I mean, how, I don't think it's a great look at times too, as far as in the village areas. They're right on top of each other, and I know it's zoned for that, but is that a good look for us?
Some people, I think, like that, though. They like having
Okay, yeah, I'm
neighbors
just-
close. They don't like having a huge property to maintain.
Yeah. I can
You
see
like,
that.
you have all the utilities that come with
Yeah,
living
no.
in the village. You have, that's where you can tie into the sewer,
Yeah,
the
I get that,
water. You're close, you're walking distance to a lot of things that we have in town.
No, I'm just throwing that out.
So
No,
oh, absolutely.
No,
I think we have enough diverse areas
Yes.
though, that in this, we can have a lot of different sections
Yeah.
where you can have that farming feel to it, you can have
Right.
that forest out in the countryside, or
Yeah.
you can be right in the heart of it.
Right. Okay.
So, but to expand on where we are, obviously if there's available land, certainly would love to see expansion around the village.
Yes, absolutely.
And then obviously along the main stretch of Southbridge Road, heading south, heading over towards Sturbridge in that direction there is property up there. There's some big farms up there too, so there's
On
some
the,
areas.
South side of the
Yeah.
turnpike.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
The south side of the turnpike is a huge area for
Yeah.
development. And even onto the north side off of Forest Ave, that area.
There
There's
is land.
areas.
There is land.
Yeah, there's land.
Do they wanna sell it is the
everywhere?
question.
It's just, do they want to sell to developers? So, I know there's forestry companies own large plots of land in town just for harvesting trees. So, that's there's probably a couple thousand acres owned by forestry. So, again, are they looking to develop in the near future? Obviously, there were some discontinued roads that lead out into those areas. They would need to be rehabbed, rebuilt, brought up to DOT standards, reaccepted to the town as maintained roads, but with access to just hundreds of acres of beautiful woods and countryside. So, again, eventually I can see those areas starting to develop. So, as the demand goes up, the money goes up, people are willing to make things happen.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, that's helpful. I think and we'll talk as we go through the key findings and some of the strategies. I think it'll become a little bit more evident, like why you might want to consider including some articulation of a priority growth area in the master plan.
Yeah.
Just as far as particularly when it comes to if as a town you want to work towards preserving some of that open space and not see it developed.
Yeah.
How do you encourage development in your priority growth areas versus kind of in more of the wooded areas, a lot of which we know is privately owned. And so we have some strategies that start to get at some of that. But I guess what I'm hearing is that this is maybe about right?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, it definitely is. Clearly where it's marked is definitely areas we'd like to see things
Yeah,
happen.
okay.
So, for sure.
Okay, great. All right, so on to the key findings. So flip into the next page here. So one of the big things that we heard, and this is probably no surprise, is that residents certainly feel like there's a big need for housing rehabilitation in town. And this is, whether it's some of the single family homes in the village centers to, the Wrights Mill, obviously a big rehabilitation potential there. But that continues to be a real need in the town and something that people want to see. They don't like the idea of continuing to see, kind of distressed properties throughout town. So if there's any way that those can start to be rehabilitated and actually used for housing again, that's something that people would really like to see. Okay. Oh, was there a question?
No.
No.
it's just-
Oh.
that
What about select?
Oh, okay.
Select people, just say hello.
No, that's absolutely fine.
So how would we go about how would that?
Yeah, so we came up with a couple strategies. So the first one is, or the first two are really about how do you bring in money. So the way that we see it is that you have a couple levers that you can pull. One is to provide money to residents to rehab these properties, right? So one of the ways that you can find money is CDBG, and so that's something that the town's familiar with. CDBG can be used for housing rehab. I don't know. I know, John, you were saying that maybe the town has used it in the past for housing
yes.
rehab.
Oh, definitely.
So putting it in this master plan is a good step to ensuring that you can do that in the future. It always looks good for grant programs to have things in your master plans. And so there are different models for that, going it alone as a town and creating your own housing rehab program, or joining up with other towns and doing kind of a regional version. There are kind of all sorts of different models there. So that was a first strategy. So it sounds like it feels like that's still a valid approach for the town?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. I'm just going to put a check mark there. Okay, so the next one is, so the state allows towns to create what's called a municipal affordable housing trust fund.
Okay.
And so this is something that can take a lot of different forms. This is something that I wasn't overly familiar with, but one of my colleagues at CMRPC kind of put me onto this. And in my research, I did find that these types of funds can be used to support rehab programs. And so an affordable housing trust fund is something that you would look to fund on your own and could be funded in kind of however you wanted to fund it. So a common way to fund it is through Community Preservation Act, which is another strategy that we put in here that I know it's whether the town wants to go that route because that comes with some additional costs for the community, kind of a big question mark there. You can fund it through bonds, taxes. You can fund it through things like in lieu fees. So that's something that you would place on like a developer to pay into, and so it essentially creates a pool of money that you can use for affordable housing projects, and you can kind of fund it however you want. It does come with some kind of mandatory program elements and kind of oversight, so I believe there's a committee that you have to set up to oversee it, so there is some work on the part of the town to set one of these up. But again, the benefit is just another avenue that you can start to kind of build dedicated money for affordable housing programs, one of which can be that rehab. So this is again, everything here is kind of just a suggestion, so you don't need to say yay or nay. It's more of if you think that's worth exploring further, I will do that additional research into what that could potentially look like. And so one of the things I've done is provide some examples of towns that have done these and funded them in a variety of ways and used them in a variety of ways. Anyway, so any initial thoughts on that?
Noticing a lot of these towns are out by the Cape and the coast too.
Easton, yeah.
Great Barrington is
Great,
the other side of
Great
town.
Barrington is
Harvard is north, right?
North.
Yeah.
it was a mix, I guess. Of,
Yeah.
But yeah, that is.
Hedge funds.
But how do you, if somebody doesn't want their house rehabilitated, they just like it the way it's run down, and it's, how, you really can't do much to get that person to change things, is that a correct statement?
How do you motivate?
Yeah, how do you
people that
motivate them?
I
don't
mean-
really want to clean up.
So I would look at it this way: if someone who likes it as it is now, if you provided the right incentives, they might change their mind. Like it could
Yeah,
be
no,
that it's a big, like maybe because of the cost of rehab, they're
Yeah.
happy with the way it looks.
Yeah.
You know, there will always be holdouts. Any program that you create, there will be people who just, you know, don't want to
Say
do
no
the
because they
program.
like
Yeah.
saying no.
And that's just the reality of any program or any initiative that you set up. Yeah, I don't have a good answer for that,
No.
other
Yeah.
than like you put
And
the right
Jim, I'm gonna put you on the
incentives.
spot here, I got another idea, Jim, you're gonna hit me at the end of this. What about looking for properties that we can develop for affordable housing that are, and again, I don't know, I never talked to you privately, about houses that are in foreclosure or not delinquent on taxes, that the town takes them over and we develop them for affordable housing.
Town-owned properties.
Yeah,
and
town-owned
stuff.
properties that we sell, and we, maybe there could be state money for that, so the town owns it, we're gonna hopefully get money for it, we can sell it, and again, I don't know logistics, and I don't know how many units are, or properties are, people owe taxes, and I know it's a nightmare, but what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that there's several communities that have done some creative things
Yeah.
with, you know, foreclosure properties or properties
Yeah.
that the town has now taken over ownership of because of non-payment of
Yeah.
taxes or so on and so forth. One of the you know, roadblocks currently.
You know those, and I know,
That
yes,
is
yeah.
right out there right now is a ruling by the Supreme Court where it states that, you know, when the town has come in to foreclose on
Yeah.
somebody's property, you know, say they owed $20,000 in back taxes, and that's what triggered the foreclosure. But all of a sudden, the town has now gotten title to the property, and then goes and sells the property for, say, $100,000. Okay, so the courts have put a hold on those because they're saying it's unfair that the town is keeping $80,000 of the profit that is built in.
Yeah.
So right now, there's a lot of communities on hold,
Gotcha.
including this one,
Yeah.
as to
I never knew that.
you know, having an auction. Because typically, what we would do is have an auction of tax title properties that we've gotten title to, and we would auction them off, and the town would recover a lot of the money. So there's a pause right now on
Gotcha.
that,
Great.
on that balance. But to comment on this gentleman's, you know, housing initiatives, I think there's a lot of good points there. You know, I did do some community preservation stuff in Springfield, but I really wasn't a big fan of that, because, you know, there is, you know, it's a tax, basically.
Yeah.
You're taxing people.
Yeah.
And, you know, a lot of people, you know, just didn't like that. And, you know, then you have to go make an appeal, and, you know, and then sometimes the project would or may or may not get approved.
Right.
And you still tax the people. So, you know, I'm not 100% sold on that community
Yeah.
preservation. I understand it. I understand the tool around it, but I'm not a huge fan of it. And I've heard some people comment in this town that they're kind
not
of
hugely-
shy
yeah,
about it as
yeah.
well.
Yep, yep.
Definitely hear that, and yeah. So in terms of the Municipal Affordable Housing Trust Fund, that's just one of the potential ways that you can fund that trust fund. There are many other ways too. It's kind of a choose your own adventure kind of thing. The idea is really that you're setting up that trust fund that's dedicated for housing projects. And so I did put in a separate item related to exploring Community Preservation Act. And so that was one of the, I think to your points, that was one of the the big considerations that I put in, that like this isn't like, yes, it comes with state matching money, but it also means you're imposing a tax on your town, and as you know, you're a lot of your residents are not wealthy. So do you want to even go down that road of adding additional costs to the town? And so, but you know, just in
And there's been recent articles where that fund that they all contribute
the
to
state fund.
is not gonna be sustainable. I don't know if
Right.
you've seen those articles about that. So, you know,
Yeah.
I understand the concept behind it, but I just don't, I don't think it was gonna work out in the end.
make a note of.
Good feedback. See, glad you lived in Springfield. You know?
Right. So I guess any other thoughts on where are we at here? I guess on this idea of your own municipal affordable housing trust fund, ignoring kind of the funding mechanism, whether that's worth exploring further, or whether you're
I don't know, there's so many expenses that the town is trying to wrap their head around right now with things that we need,
Yeah.
you know, just as a community, you know, a police and fire complex, you know, something of that. I mean, that's a big investment, and that's something that I know we're working towards. So again, adding more expense onto those big ticket items already, again, I think it's gonna be, there's gonna be a lot of pushback.
So you would rather not go down the road in any way of kind of constraining funds for that specific purpose, I guess, is kind of what I'm hearing, if that.
As of today, as in
As
this
of today.
environment, right?
Yeah,
As-
the environment,
that
the
could change
town
if we
we're
got
in
some-
right now,
yeah.
the economy is in, where people, you know, as far as what available funds people have, you know, including the town.
Yeah,
It's,
yeah.
it's a lot to ask right now. You know,
Yeah,
maybe in the
totally
near
agree.
future, things will get better. Again, the town starts growing a little more.
Something happens.
Things change, you know,
Yep.
if we get, you know, again, an influx of people brings more money, brings more opportunity.
Yeah.
Now all of a sudden, hey, maybe we have a little extra, we can set up a program like this
Yeah.
to help some of the residents that are struggling and are, you know, that need extra money to help fix up their properties or whatever, and, you know, obviously they don't have access to it. This allots them some access to funds
Yeah.
and some help.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think
So
we should
I
table
don't,
that
I
for
don't
now.
think it's something we need to completely look away from, but I think the timing on it right now is
Yeah.
is not
So
right.
what we could do is, you know, not have it as part of like a goal or an objective or an
Yeah,
action item in
I
the
agree.
plan, but we could have some articulation of like future programming that the town can explore.
Yes.
And kind of leave it
Possible
at that.
options.
Yes,
Potential.
exactly.
possible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that. I like it a lot.
Love it.
And you know, historically, you know, the town has used its CDBG funds to do,
Right.
you know, improvements in infrastructure, road, you know,
Housing rehab,
yeah,
we
yeah.
have
you know,
done
we
housing
had some
rehab.
housing rehab not too long
And-
ago. You know, you know, that program within itself, you know, requires a lot of, you know, a lot of administration.
Yeah.
You know, on the town's part, but just the, you know, the housing rehab aspect of it. So, you know, we would have to, you know, think about, you know, staffing and making sure we have the proper, you know, I think when it was done before, our previous Pioneer Valley administrated it, you know, if we would have to take it on here now with CMRPC, I think it would be up to us to administrate it. And so we would have to see if we have the proper, you know, capacity to do something like that.
Okay. And so what I think that would lead me to say, I think if we're including that in the plan, I think there should be some articulation of like what the town should expect if you were to go that avenue. And I don't know, John, if you have, I don't want to put you on the spot, but do you have any other thoughts on like I'm asking John because he's our CDBG guy. but as far as like running something like that as a town versus like a regional program through PVPC,
Yeah,
Like-
I mean, we find it, so the CRPC would sub-consult to PVPC. There's still ones that do the administration of the housing rehab program. We don't currently have the staff or the capacity at CMRPC to administer that. So it would either be us subbing out to PVPC, or yes, the town would have to take that on. You know, I think it's definitely worth considering for future applications of an activity to include, and it's always an option. But I think, yeah, having further discussions, like when it comes to time to develop the application, I think that'd be a good idea.
Yeah,
to look
table
into.
for now.
Nail
Yeah.
down
Just table
how
for
we're
now, yeah.
going to support this program, who's gonna be doing what role and tracking
Yeah.
and approving and assisting. I know there's so many moving parts when it comes to housing rehab that it definitely takes a lot of hours of somebody's time
Right.
to do all this, all the administrative work and
Yeah.
whatnot, so.
But in terms of it being an option through CDBG.
It's,
definitely.
yeah, and I do think it's a great program, but again, I don't think we're set up to do it, and obviously you guys aren't even set up to do it because of the staffing issues of that, but, you know, again, it's not something I wanna look away from, because I have seen the results, some of the neighborhoods we're working in now, that we have houses in those neighborhoods that had done housing rehab, and they're definitely much more attractive properties at this point than they were before. And again, these were people that, especially housing rehab is so expensive. Any remodeling, anything is so expensive. So if you don't have help, chances are a lot of people can't afford that. So,
yeah,
So-
it makes a lot of sense. I think what we wanted to do there was, you know, like obviously money can make a big difference to people, so we wanted to at least explore some strategies that were directing money to people to do some of these things. And
Yeah.
so there aren't, you know, endless options for that. But CDBG is a big one. So,
Yeah.
but I guess on that note, before we jump to strategy 3 and 4, any other ideas about kind of that money piece, like where money can come?
On the housing stuff, just briefly, you know, if we can, you know, we get a small pot of CDBG funds, but, you know, we've been very creative with, you know, either, you know, pushing it with other grants like the One Stop stuff, and, you know, if we can focus in on what are some of the other streets that would qualify for housing rehab, that we could have a list ready to go of streets that you know meet the income, because I understand the income may change here, you know, the levels may change in Warren, and so, you know, if we could have a list of streets ready to go where we know that these projects are CDBG ready and we can go after them, then we can consult with our highway surveyor to see and try to prioritize those as he sees, you know, the most needed streets, and then we can start attacking them. And then, you know, trying to, okay, if we exhaust that, is there maybe some other areas in town where if we created a, you know, if they fall within that income thing, I'm asking this, I don't know the answer, but is there ways that we can maybe expand some streets, maybe that would spur economic development, where maybe somebody would want to, you know, start building or something? I don't know, you know, that's something that maybe
Yeah,
we could,
I think that's
you know,
really
look at that.
Interesting. Are you saying that as like that would be useful to us as a town, or something that you want to try to articulate in the master plan?
Well, something in the plan, you know,
Yeah.
if it could spell some of that stuff out a little bit or give us some guidance, I think that would be
Yeah.
invaluable
I
information.
think we could. So my only, and maybe I'm misunderstanding, but I'll just say my only hesitation with going down a road of actually like putting that on a map and putting it in a plan is that you're potentially revealing information about people, about residents that they may not want public
Mhm.
as far as income, right? So we get, like, we have income data at a high geographic level, at the census block group level is kind of the most granular that we can get it, but it's not the Census Bureau that collects that information, ensures that you can't actually identify particular people or particular streets. I know with CDBG, because you do a lot of income surveys, we probably have a lot of that information, but it may not be, I guess I would just caution trying to, I think we can put it in the plan as a, like, if you're going to explore housing rehab through CDBG, here's something that the town can do to be ready to go and
Yeah.
reach out to people. I don't necessarily think that identifying
Yep,
those
okay.
specific
I
streets
gotcha.
in the plan would be the best idea. But that's just my thought as far as like a privacy
I mean,
piece.
whether or not we can, be creative, that, we can identify areas that are CDBG eligible, and maybe, not identify specific streets, maybe you can identify a group of streets or a neighborhood or something, not
Yeah.
being as specific,
Mhm.
where we can look to see where some areas need that.
Yeah.
And not just in housing, but in infrastructure,
Mhm.
in improving of the roads.
Yeah. Yeah.
We've done a lot of work, and Jeremy's done a lot of work with improving roads with, a very small budget, and we try to stretch it as much as we can. And so, we've been creative with the CDBG stuff and the one-stop stuff to try to finish these projects.
Yeah, yeah, and I know we'll touch on that in the transportation chapter for sure. But
Mhm.
I think your idea about trying to look at that more at a high, maybe a neighborhood level
Yeah,
or something.
back it up.
Yeah, I think
Bigger
that's,
picture of,
I think
level.
that's
Yeah.
possible.
Whatever this village or
Yeah.
this area, not being specific, but creating
Mhm.
an idea in your head of where we're talking about though.
Yeah, if we're really talking about housing in relation to CDBG, it would
Yeah.
be done by an application process by individual homeowners.
Yes.
Not an area-wide
No,
basis.
no, yeah, it's
But-
individuals, whether they qualify.
Yeah, but as a town, it would benefit you to be ready to say like, okay, let's go, canvas or something,
Yeah.
like knock on some doors and say, hey, we have this program, or
Yeah.
whether
Right.
you're putting notices out in bills or whatever
Yeah.
it is, kind of thing.
Just kind of notifying the community that there are opportunities if
Mhm.
you come to the town to realize that, hey, times are tough, maybe we can help you.
Yeah, yeah, great, wonderful. Okay, so that's kind of the money piece of
Gotcha.
housing rehab. So thanks, that was a great conversation. So the next strategy, and again, this is still under that key finding of housing rehab, and this is a strategy that will come up under multiple key findings. But the next one, number 3, is exploring opportunities to loosen zoning requirements that may make rehab more affordable or feasible, right? So this is one of the big levers that you have as a town that you can pull to encourage the type of development you want, or to make redevelopment, rehabilitation more feasible. So, this is within the town zoning bylaws, you have a lot of different levers that you can pull. So I've listed a couple of them out. I have not done a deep dive into what the actual bylaws look like in regards to all of these. I just kind of did a cursory review. And again, this is just like, if this is a strategy that you want to explore in the plan, then we'll do more digging into this. But you can look at things like what we call non-conformance provisions, which are, you in your code, you outline, minimum dimensional standards for a new house, for a new property, right? So like, what are your setbacks? How far do you have to be from the side property lines or the front? And you may have properties needing rehab that don't meet those requirements, but often what's written into code is that you have to, if you're going to rehab a property, you need to come into compliance with the current zoning bylaw. So there's maybe an opportunity there to loosen some of that, to say, okay, we'll grant a variance or something else. If you rehab this property, we'll waive those requirements. Parking is kind of one of those, it kind of goes hand in hand with non-conformance provisions, but, loosening some of those parking requirements or loosening dimensional standards, maybe saying, hey, we'll give you an extra unit on the property if you rehab the one that's currently there. So tweaking maybe some of those density standards in a bylaw might be another lever that you can pull. And then potentially expanding, to go along with that, maybe expanding ownership opportunities. So maybe there's a larger house that's in need of rehab, and you say, okay, well, we'll allow you to do a duplex there and condo that property into 2 units. And maybe that makes it a little bit more financially viable to rehab the property. So anyway, those are just some examples of the kinds of things that you can start to look at in a zoning bylaw to maybe make redevelopment or rehabilitation of a property a little bit more financially viable. Yeah, any thoughts?
I get very nervous about changing zoning laws and opening up Pandora's box for people to say, well, you did it for housing, why can't I put my business in a certain area, junkyard in a certain area? And I'm just I think zoning is one of the strongest assets for a town. When you start breaking it down to make exceptions, it opens up potentially a can of worms. I think if it was up to me, but I'd make zoning more tougher than we have it right now.
Strict,
Yeah, that's what I want, but that's my
But
opinion.
where,
I'm not speaking for
stricter where?
Yeah, in what ways? I mean,
Well, I mean, identifying where, for future businesses, do we really, I'm not sure where certain one-family houses, certain condominiums, that type of zoning, get clarification on that. I just don't want the development of the land to go where it wouldn't be, we're reducing it and somebody could put a business that nobody wants in the town. That's my concern. Tell me if I'm going down the wrong tree here.
No, I think, Steve, I think you make some valid points,
Yeah.
you know,
I hate
you know,
messing with zoning.
unfortunately, you know, because, you know, we're a smaller community
Yeah.
and we do have some standards and we do want to protect the charm of the
Absolutely.
community. You know, those things, you know, in smaller communities should be really looked at on a case-by-case basis.
Yes, exactly, Jim.
And so, you know, if there's a big proposal that's coming up and, you know, and it's vetted and people are part of the process and part of the planning and, you know, and there needs to be a, you know, some type of permit that's issued or a variance as you referred to, you know, it's properly vetted and people feel comfortable about it.
Yeah.
And that, you know, it's not necessarily that we're not going to hear what you have to say because it doesn't necessarily fit in that particular area, but bring bring your plans, put a proposal together, and, you know, I think the town would be at least at the minimum receptive to hearing what you have to say.
Yeah, so that, I mean, totally hear that.
Yeah.
I guess so this is thinking, again, kind of narrowing it back down to the town's desire to see housing rehabilitation. Are you interested as a town in saying this is a lever that we have that might encourage some of that rehabilitation and exploring that? That's all that's saying. This isn't we're gonna all of a sudden go redo our zoning bylaws, but it's saying this is a tool we have to achieve something that we want. Is it worth exploring? Your answer can be no, but I think some of the comments we're getting, and we'll go into that for sure in some of the other sections about just more generally about kind of housing development, but specifically related to housing rehab. Is there any interest on the part of the town to look at that as a potential tool to encourage it?
So I'm not following you. So
Mhm.
you know, so for example, do you mean like you know, if a particular piece of land doesn't meet the frontage requirements to build a 2-family there, and so they're looking for some type of zoning relief, and they're coming in for whether it be a variance of some sort? Is that what you're looking? Is that what?
Yeah, but specifically related to buildings that you want to see rehabbed,
okay.
Okay.
right?
So it's flexibility, but it's flexibility based simply
Yeah,
on not
or-
new development, but it's like, hey, you know, this property needs to be, you know, cleaned up, or fixed, or this needs to be done, but you can't do it unless you do all these other steps, because these other steps are what we require. You're saying is, hey, we'll give you a little flexibility on the other things if you know, basically
Yeah, that's-
rehab all of this, make this clean, nice, beautiful, bring, you know, inviting, and we'll say, well, we'll let it go that, you know, you only have one driveway when you really need two driveways to, you know, cater to this size property or whatever it might be.
Right.
Or whether you're not supposed to have a second entrance to that property, well, we'll allow that in order for you to completely rehab this whole
Yeah,
property.
yeah.
So, hey, we'll let you have the second entrance in order for a little more parking. Now we can have, you know, 3 beautiful units here, or right now there's 2 that are, you know, it's kind of shoddy and you can't fix it up. You're not gonna fix it up to make it for 3 if you can't expand, which the zoning won't allow you to do.
Yeah, yeah,
That's
and
what you're
so
saying.
that's exactly right. I think the pieces that would, I think to both of your comments about, you know, that you want to have some level of discretionary oversight over kind of new development in the town. I think when you look at incentives, or when you look at provisions in a bylaw that would really encourage rehab, it probably would be something like allowing an additional unit on a property. So I think to that extent, your points are really valid. And so if that's in your minds a non-starter, we don't need to go down that road. Does that add some clarity to?
Like, I know specific examples that you're talking about that have actually happened here, where somebody wanted to develop a property, add a couple of apartments, had plenty of space within the building to add the apartments, but didn't have the space on the physical property to allow that many people to live, because maybe it was only half an acre in the village, where they have two units now, and they had room to expand to 4,
Mhm.
but because it's only so many square feet, you really couldn't expand to 4. You probably could push it to 3, but the person didn't want to invest this money just to add 1 unit.
Right.
They wanted to add
Right.
2 units.
Yeah.
And at the end, it got denied. They didn't end up rehabbing their property, and it pretty much sits the way it did
Yeah.
a couple of years ago.
Right.
You know, and this was a resident who wanted to invest, wanted to put in and make more housing for people on a level that, you know, we can afford. And that's something we need, because there's not much available here. Everything here is pretty well taken.
Yeah.
So, but in that case, it was denied. And,
Yeah.
and it was a zoning issue.
Yeah,
This
so that's-
exact, it's very specific to what you're talking about.
Right.
I feel it probably, obviously, everybody has their own opinion. I think that variance should have been granted to allow that property to develop, and it would have gave a better image as you're rolling through town, driving by this place. But, I wasn't my choice. I had no say in the matter. I'm just a
Sure.
resident here. I wasn't on the board that dealt with that, and, I respect their choice, but that's flexibility that we don't offer right now. Would the people wanna offer that? I mean, again,
Yeah.
it's case by case, so.
So I guess, you know, there's even in the master plan itself, it can remain as something that you can explore as a town, as an action item. You know,
Mhm.
you don't have to make that determination in the master plan. That's an option. And so, for our purposes, I guess the answer for the committee is, does it stay on the table as something to put in the master plan? And so, we have cases where this could have been a valuable tool.
Yeah.
There's a lot of concern about this opening up a can of worms, and that's a valid concern.
And my other concern is, if I don't want to add more apartments, because they're not paying we're not getting any extra tax money. where I'd rather put that money to single-family houses. We don't need to be burning up
So-
the police, our fire with extra apartment from renter units. We don't need that. We don't have the resources. And I don't wanna add those units to those a single family.
And so
Yeah.
here you are, right in one
That's right.
room,
Yeah.
a small group of
Yeah.
people, and instantly you have different
Yeah.
visions of what direction we wanna go
Yeah.
in. So again,
I think it's gotta be
sensitive
done
case by
case
case.
by
Case
case,
by
yeah.
case.
Mhm.
It has to be case by case, so, I mean, that's, how, do we leave it in the plan to say that, hey, we are a community willing to take case by case actions to
support-
adjust to support development?
Or
I
to
mean,
support
or
rehabilitation of existing
do we not want
properties.
to even talk about this? Is not, no, we don't want
Yeah.
this in there.
And that's,
And
I
that's-
can't answer that.
Yeah, that's a
You've
tough
gotta
one.
come
It's
up-
I
very
see those
difficult.
points.
It's very difficult.
Like I said,
You know, it depends, you know, I think it depends, you know, is it gonna be somebody, you know, again, when you look at a development, you know, potential development project, are these people pretenders, are they contenders? You know, are these people real people that have money, that have experience in dealing with, you know, multiple housing units, that manage it well, that have a nice product? Or are they, you know, landlords that are absentee?
And
You know,
that's
a problem.
That is what
Yeah.
exactly why I worry about it, and I see it around the town, absentee
Mm-hmm.
and what goes on.
So
Oh, yeah.
I think it has to be looked at as, you know, how viable the proposal that is being
Yeah.
put forward to whatever board they're seeking relief on.
Yeah.
I'm gonna push you to say yes or no to leave it in,
Yeah.
because I'm
Are-
hearing all
are-
of this.
Are we leaving
but-
it in or are we
but
not?
it's do.
I don't
is
want
this-
to, from my perspective, I don't want it in, no, I don't want to even approach the zoning issue. But I could be overruled by my colleagues, and I understand that. I wouldn't be devastated on that.
I feel it would be a case by case.
Yeah. But now, can we leave it in and clarify it as case by
Sure.
case?
Yeah.
Yeah.
like the
I think that's
Yeah.
I think we need to find
I
that
think
common
there's a-
ground where it's still in there and it's still telling people we're willing to work with you. But it's not like, well, they decided yes for him and no for him, and well, they had almost the same situation.
And
But
that- yeah.
you know, listen, maybe there was certain factors that pushed it one way or the other because it was handled case by case,
Mhm.
not just a blanket of, okay, well, you come in, you want to do this, we'll bend the rules for you, we'll bend the rules for you, no problem. Next thing you know, it's like all kinds of stuff happening, and it's not, people aren't complying, and then everybody's upset. So, again, I think it should stay in, but be very clear on that it is definitely something handled case by case. So,
Any thoughts, Jim?
yeah.
You wanna be the tiebreaker?
No, I understand, I just, I'm very on record of.
Yeah, I can.
Because I drive around town and I see what goes on here.
Yeah.
And I'm worried that we add more units and more, and then the absentee landlord, which we have a lot of, and the place.
Yeah.
And they're not, we're not bringing in any extra tax revenue.
Not in all, in some cases you are. So, again, you can't,
And
you
my-
can't isolate it to only what you see, because there are other things that can happen, other
Right.
developments, business owners.
Right.
And people that have more money and opportunity to bring to town. But if you slam the door on them for this issue, maybe they're not gonna bring this, and this, which all bring tax revenue, bring new business, bring new people. Again, you gotta be careful where you say no. You can't just say no to everybody that wants this type of stuff done,
Oh.
because you're gonna single everybody
That's why
out.
it's reviewing each
Yeah,
case.
each case
can
is.
review
Each situation,
You know?
each street, where the street is located to a lot of factors.
Well, I think that would be, you know, reviewed based on their proposal that they
Yeah.
submit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if they submit something that's, you know, on a napkin, or they submit something that's done by a registered design professional, that, you know, and they have experience, that they've been in this business for 20 years, and these are the properties that we manage, and, you know, and this is what we're doing, you know, that's a different case.
Mhm.
Those are two different cases.
Mhm.
But, John Smith, who's got his proposal here on a napkin and, wants to rent to people and, lives in Worcester, and is not gonna be around to maintain the property, then, that's a different case.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where if you have, say, same thing, Jim Bob, Jim Bob owns the property next door.
Yeah.
So, and
Yeah.
he wants to rehab that property and turn it into a two-family. He lives next door, he's going to be a part of their lives, he's gonna be around that property and maintaining. Maybe he's the guy that you bring to the table and say, yeah, okay, well, maybe we can work with you because you are not absent, you are here, you are part of the community already.
Mhm.
So it wouldn't benefit you to have slum or whatever come next door to you. So especially if it's your property next door
Yeah.
or across the street, whatever it might
Yeah.
be. So,
Great. Well, I think, so for sake of time,
yes, we need
I'm
to
gonna
finish
make the
this topic.
I
decision
know.
to leave it here, and I'm going to articulate it in a way that I think mirrors what I'm hearing.
Okay.
But you can always, when we bring the draft chapter back, you can always say, nope, don't like it, take it out.
fine.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
How's that sound?
I agree.
Okay.
Okay.
So last piece on rehab
Yeah.
is we wanted to put in something about Wrights Mill.
Yes.
And so that's the fourth strategy, is continue to work towards the redevelopment or reuse of Wrights Mill, right? And so my assumption is that you want to keep that in, set you up nicely for
Absolutely.
potentially future grant applications. Also shows that you're open to working with potential developers as a town for that particular property.
Yep.
Any objections to that?
Any thoughts, Steve?
Clarify redevelopment of right, we're
I
talking
think
about.
reuse, adaptive reuse is a better way to put that. I don't know the site well enough yet
Yeah.
to kind of understand what the, entirety of the building conditions are, but, you may have some issues with some of the buildings that it makes more sense to kind of tear some things down.
Mhm.
So I wanted to keep both pieces of language in there just as a.
That's fine.
Okay. Right. So, key finding number 2. And this was the one I anticipated us getting real in the weeds on. I think we've had some of the conversations that will probably inform some of this. But, so already heard mention of an asset of living in Warren is that you are relatively more affordable than a lot of surrounding towns, a lot of the metro areas that you're within close proximity to.
Correct.
So it's that you're halfway to everywhere
Right.
kind of mentality, and it's also affordable, right? So it's beautiful, affordable, you're close to things. That's an asset that probably will be realized by people as areas like Boston and Worcester continue to get more expensive. So, the way that we frame this is that the town should take an active role in trying to ensure that the town remains affordable. This is a really difficult thing to do because it inevitably means that you either have to encourage the development of big A affordable housing, as in income restricted housing, or you have to support housing development in town. And that question of housing development is something that even this committee is likely to not agree on, right?
Mhm.
So we talked about that priority growth area at the beginning.
Yeah.
And so when you do something like that, the idea is you're facilitating, potentially trying to facilitate denser housing in those two village centers, maybe along the commercial corridors, instead of trying to encourage that over something like more, using the wonky term, sprawling development, which is, larger lots, more road infrastructure per house kind of development, right?
The
So-
cul-de-sac neighborhood.
Yeah, single-family subdivisions, that kind of
Yes,
thing,
yes.
right? So, obviously, you have a zoning bylaw that permits certain types of development in certain places that already exists. So, there is the potential already for additional housing development. but you do, what we've seen, you know, us as professional planners, what we continue to see cases of are towns starting to enter into an imbalance between supply and demand, right? So you can see sudden surges of housing demand, but development can take a little bit of time to catch up, right? So anyway, so underneath this key finding are some strategies that maybe you can start to look at. Some of them are related to zoning, and that's going to be tricky. But we wanted to put them out there and at least have the conversations and see where that leads us. So, as far as keeping Warren an affordable place to live, the first strategy is exploring state incentives for promoting affordable housing production. So there are some examples of this. We already talked about one, which is the Community Preservation Act, which I think we will leave as we will mention it, but it's not going to be an action item in the plan, right?
Yeah.
Like, this thing exists. If Warren gets to the point that they feel the town would be supportive of a small, property tax surcharge, that may happen in the future, but so we'll kind of nix that for now.
Yeah.
The other one that I did want to mention is that the state has a program called 40R zoning, which is really looking at or encouraging towns. So the way it works is that you create an overlay district that supports a little bit higher density development, and if you do that, you are then eligible to get some money. So instead of doing something like creating or having a local surcharge, you can create an overlay district that when development happens, some money will come from the state to the town that you can use for things like affordable housing. And so when we were looking at this, in the workshop, when we're talking with residents and we're hearing, I'd probably be okay with a little bit more density in the village centers if it meant some of the outlying areas didn't get developed because I like to walk my dog in the woods or whatever, they'd be okay with that. So we're looking at this and we're saying, okay, there may be, if that's something residents are interested in, there may be some state funding that you could strategically get along with that, right? So if you were interested in exploring some level of zoning bylaw amendments or rewriting certain sections to allow certain other uses, you could do that and also get some state funding if you aligned it with some of those state goals. So that's what that is about. Initial thoughts, reactions. So I think what we would have to do is articulate a little bit more what that would mean for the town. In terms of what that zoning overlay would potentially look like. I think in our mind, it was something that you could align with maybe like a priority growth area. But we wanted to make sure if there's money available and you're doing something that aligns with
What's
program,
available, yeah.
then why not do it? But again, this is just an initial kind of strategy direction, and so it's more of a, should we go deeper on this or non-starter?
So that could go into the statement of recreation a little bit, developing that south side of town, where walking trails and.
Well, and that's it,
nature.
is, all right, so we'll change the zoning to allow a little more dense zoning in this region. And attached to that is this, 100 acres that we're gonna develop into like a walking park or something. Just have some recreational trails or, whatever it might be. And I think if they coincide with each other, so you have, okay, so we're gonna put a little bit more housing in this area, but we're gonna tie it to blocking out sections of town where development won't happen, and it's purely be for recreation.
So those people that live in the dense populations can
Have
take
a
off
close
to
Yep.
quarter mile
area,
away to
yeah,
go for a nice
exactly.
walk.
Walk to the end of the road here, and all of a sudden there's,
Yeah.
5-6 miles of trails and different things, activities, things they can do and go and see, and like you said, get out into the woods, into the forests and the fields, and feel like, yeah, you're in Warren, you're in.
Yeah.
So, I personally think this would be good, but I imagine Steve probably wouldn't like it, cause it's leaning in a direction that you just.
And
didn't.
before, so I do want to say, I want to expand our imagination a little bit
Yeah.
in terms of what dense housing means, because where the mind goes is big apartment buildings, right?
Mhm.
That is not the only option you have as a
If I'm
town.
gonna do dense housing, I'm 100% single-family dense housing with an acre lots. That's what
Well,
But that's not
almost,
that's not dense
that's not
housing.
dense housing.
Okay.
So what we're
Because
what-
Okay.
45,000 square feet is
So,
is
and I-
a lot, which is just over an acre.
Okay.
And remember that you have a lot of people in Warren that have different budgets.
Yes, I know.
They have different preferences for how they want to live. In terms, not everyone wants to take care of a 1 acre property. You like the look of that, right? But
Well,
you
I like
already
the look
have
of it
that.
because it's not burdening our police and our fire and our highway to,
Well,
our attack, because.
I'll even push back on that a little
Okay.
Please do.
bit. So, and I'll have some. I'm doing another chapter, and I'll have some interesting data to kind of share.
Okay.
But on a per acre basis,
Yes.
denser housing tends to be more financially productive for a town than lower density, right? So if you think about a big apartment building on a 1 acre lot, much more valuable property than a single family home on that same lot, same street frontage, right? Same amount of frontage, same amount of roadway
Same maintenance
that
for
highway
us.
has to take care of, but you're probably, the tax revenue you're bringing in is probably 10 times or more what you get from a single family home.
On an apartment.
Yep,
Yeah.
and I'll prove it to you.
Yeah,
Not
I'd
right
like
now,
to
but I'll
see
prove
that.
it to you.
I like,
Yep.
okay.
I'll have I'm gonna make a cool map to show you
Yeah,
what
I
that
mean-
looks like.
And to say too that maybe we're talking condominiums or something. That's, you can have some gorgeous
Now you're talking, now
properties.
that's something right.
Gorgeous condominiums.
And it's an ownership
And then,
opportunity.
and then
housing.
now you're
Oh,
talking
senior
about
housing.
Yep.
Not senior, but 50 and
50
over,
plus
so we don't kill our school
community.
system, which is already killed.
Yep, yep.
That's what I'm saying.
So,
That's.
and that's the other thing is that
I could
denser
go for that.
housing
Yeah.
also tends to, so people that live in denser housing tend to have fewer kids than single family homes.
That's what I want.
So that's also another factor. So when you start to look at the finances from the town's perspective of kind of supporting some of that in the village centers, there's actually real opportunity to put the town in a better financial footing by supporting some of that. So,
That's what
That's
I
my
would
two
be,
cents.
I would, that's what I would. that's
and I
what
will I'll articulate this in the plan
Yeah.
too, but as probably as part of the land use chapter, probably, just
Okay.
because it's more generalized
Yeah.
than housing. But
Okay.
so
I would say
Keep it
leave-
in.
Keep that
Yeah.
in, yeah.
all right. And then, so the next one, and we've talked a lot about this, but strategy 2 is again looking at the town zoning bylaws for barriers to housing production and maintaining affordability. So this is not likely in the master plan to say, do this, but it will be an articulation of some of the trade-offs that you can explore as a town when it comes to housing production. So again, looking at some of this conversation around denser housing fitting into a certain space as far as the town's finances, and how, right, you're a small town, you don't want huge apartment buildings outside of maybe some strategic locations like the redevelopment or the reuse of Wrights Mill.
Wrights Mill, perfect,
Um,
yeah.
But that word density can mean a lot of different things,
Absolutely,
right?
no.
And so we'll try to articulate what some of those trade-offs are. And again, you don't have endless levers to pull as a town. Zoning is probably the biggest
One
one,
of the biggest.
right?
yeah.
As far as housing production.
Gotcha.
So, I think because we work in a lot of different towns, we see what remote work has done, to some of the surrounding communities, maybe a little closer to some of the metro areas where people are, it's like, oh, I'll escape the city to be in a smaller town because I'm working from home 4 days a week or 3 days a
Yep.
week or whatever, right? And so those dynamics exist. you don't want to be unprepared for that as a town, and zoning is one of the things you can look at to support affordability. Strategy number 3 is explore opportunities for either formal or less formal public-private type partnerships. So again, this is going into something like Wrights Mill, where you don't own the property, so it's probably not a formal public-private partnership, but you're a real factor as a town in whether a developer is going to say yes or no, right?
Mhm.
And so that was kind of the motivation behind that strategy, was saying like and I think to your point about properties, maybe distressed properties, maybe you don't have the capacity to take those, or you don't want to, as you know, you want to be good neighbors to your residents, and you don't want to maybe take properties away from people, but maybe you want to be encouraging of finding someone who wants to rehab that property for the property owner, you know, and sort of fitting in some of that, being a relationship builder between people that want to do the things you want as a town. And so, yeah.
Yeah.
And then, okay, so the last one here, again, put it in because it's an option. But this is a complicated one, and I'm always hesitant to bring this up. But another mechanism you have as a town are property taxes, right? And so you have the power to say, we're going to waive property taxes if you do X or you do Y to some degree, right, as an incentive.
Yeah.
I will always caution towns on going that route, because the research on how effective they are is really dicey, right? So where they tend to be effective is where you have existing properties that people don't really want to touch. So something like the Wrights Mill, but maybe if it was in even worse condition, right? And so in a situation like that, they can be quite effective. There's a lot of research to suggest in other areas, you're likely subsidizing development that would have happened anyway, right? And so you don't necessarily want to go down that road. Maybe you're not so concerned if it
What do you
means
mean, like
that
a
those.
TIF?
Yeah, yep. TIF is one of those tax abatements and
Tax
TIFs.
incremental financing?
Yep, tax incremental financing. Close example, Worcester's been using that as a tool for some of the areas, and some of that development has happened. There have been some pushbacks against whether that's a good, and so specifically with tax increment financing, the way it works is you set up a tax increment district and you say to a developer, if you redevelop this site, you know, maybe it's the Wrights Mill in this example, we will use the incremental increase in property values in that area, and we'll put that money back into that TIF district. Right? So the idea being, if you redevelop a vacant property like the Wrights Mill, you will affect surrounding property values positively. And so you're saying, to incentivize you to do that, to redevelop that property, we are going to take that increment, not the entire property tax, but we're holding property taxes as they are, and anything above that we're taking and we're putting it back, whether it's public improvements or direct payments, to the developer as an incentive. It is an option you have. You can do this. It's complicated, and you run the risk of then committing funds that could be used elsewhere to a developer that may not actually need those funds. So you can probably tell I'm maybe a slight
little
cynic,
hesitant,
hesitant
and
to
I
go,
agree
but
with you with your cynicism.
Yeah,
I really do.
because
I don't think that.
but it's an option you have.
Yeah.
So kind of.
Well, I mean, we did TIFs, and I did a TIF for Smith and Wesson. But that was a big company.
Yep.
They did an expansion project. They did a development project next to Smith and Wesson, where a couple other companies like FW Webb we did TIFs for. We did Springfield Performance Food Groups. We did some TIFs over there. But there was other things that were involved instead of just the discount off of the taxes. It was hiring local people, have a commitment, a solid
Yeah.
commitment
Yeah,
of
that's
hiring
right.
local people. Having some type of investment into the community.
Yeah.
Stake. There was more to them than just getting the TIF. But it was the hiring. The key was to hire
Yeah, yeah.
local
Yeah, and so
people.
you can set them up in a lot of different ways. And so I think some of the examples in Worcester, they've been doing some of those things too. But at the end of the day, the mechanism of putting that money back into that specific location is generally the same, right? The district, you have control over what that district looks like. So the fact that something like Wrights Mill is in an area that is, I believe, lower income, right? You have an opportunity there that could actually be a way to help improve a part of town that needs it. But it's an attractive thing that larger cities have been using this for a while, and it can be an attractive thing, but it's difficult to get it right.
Yeah.
I guess is my
I
perspective.
think it's got to be done on a case-by-case basis.
Exactly. Smith and Wesson, it's a home run. But
Right.
Some
I
development.
mean, if you're talking about a major corporation
Yeah,
that maybe
absolutely, yeah.
would come to town.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. Home run.
We'll be very
You got to have
flexible
that
and
in your
helpful.
you got to have that in your toolbox in case
Yeah.
you need it.
Yeah, absolutely. Agree.
Yeah.
And then you lay out, better, the training of the employees.
Yeah.
Whatever, yeah,
Local
I mean,
people,
again, yeah, if
whatever.
you have a big company wanting to come and invest and move into our town, obviously,
Case-by-case
we
basis,
absolutely
Jim's
are
point.
going to make it inviting for them.
Yeah. So this is both this can be a housing tool, it can be an economic development tool,
Yeah.
right? It can fill a lot of different
Yeah.
boxes for a town.
In that case, I
Um,
wouldn't wanna see it disappear, cause we should, like
And
he
go
said, it
back-
needs to stay, in the tool bag. But,
But on a case-by-case basis, the old word is from.
yeah, and that's,
Yeah.
when you're dealing with a small
Right, on a
community, though, that
case-by-case
is
basis,
so
right.
important.
Exactly.
So leave it in as a
Yeah.
potential tool
Case-by-case
for.
basis, yeah.
Yeah, I
For
would
housing?
leave that in.
So we have it in the tool bag.
All right.
What kind of money though are you talking about down in Wrights? And the city, it's gonna be a lot more, right?
Well, I mean, it's it's multi-million dollar property in development. It's
No, what I'm asking is, what's the tax at Wrights Mill? It's nowhere near what it would be in the city of Worcester, like you said, for the developer.
That's right.
What are we talking? I think it's like 30-something thousand, right?
I don't have.
Well, you should know that, I would think.
I don't know the property in that much detail.
Yeah, so I think it's less than 40 grand. That's not anything that is gonna invite a developer.
So, you mean that's what they're paying
Yeah.
in taxes?
Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe not for something like a tax abatement. A tax increment financing is a little bit different.
Yeah.
In that they're not getting an maybe a tax abatement is a part of the program, but it's the town's committing to funnel property tax revenue from the surrounding area back into the district.
Again, it's a small amount.
well, again, if we're talking about Wrights Mill develops, then all those small streets off of South Street, where all those houses are, the value of those properties are going to go way up.
Yeah.
And now the tax income difference between what it is now and then once it goes way up, that gap over all of those houses, that adds up to a lot of money. We're talking about giving that money back.
Well, let's go to the opposite. Let's say it just sits there and it never gets sold or developed, then what happens?
Oh, nothing then. I mean, we don't offer this if it doesn't sell. So
Right.
this
But I
is
mean,
only
you're
something
looking at-
you offer if you have the player at your door wanting to come through and
Right,
build
right.
in our town, help our town.
But you guys are only looking at it one perspective. What if it just sits there for the next 10, 20 years?
Well, then, again, this strategy doesn't hurt or help us if nobody goes there. It doesn't hurt to have this strategy available. It's not saying we're gonna use it, but we're just telling big business or big development that, hey, if you come to us, we have options. And if you don't want the options, no big deal. We don't have, and if we don't want to offer that, we still don't have to. If we don't like what you're telling us, we don't like your plan, we don't have to offer this. But if you're a big company or a big developer
It's in-
and have a lot of positive to bring to
Toolbox,
the
but,
town, and you prove yourself, we vet them, we make sure this is the real deal. These guys actually bring money and bring development, bring people,
And they have a
bring
history.
other businesses. Yes,
And
they have history. That's when you go into the toolbox and you grab this and you say, hey, listen, we have this
Right.
option. We're gonna sweeten the pot a little bit more. Don't look at that big development over in the next town over. Come to our town, because we'll take care of you. And that's all it is.
That's it.
And again, it being case by case, we don't have to offer this. If we don't like them, sorry, no, we're not gonna put this on the table.
Yeah.
But if we don't have it available to put on the table, then then it's not an option ever. So this keeps it
So keep-
available.
So I think we all agree what we want.
Yeah.
Keep it the case
Great.
by case, okay?
That was very well
Thank you.
said. Perfect. Right, so that was the, are we doing?
Okay,
on
that was four.
time? Do we have
strategy four.
an end?
Yeah,
to-
we're
we
hurting
gotta
for time
move
here.
along here.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, so the next
We're
one,
dragging.
I think, so the next key finding is specifically related to seniors. So one of the things that we heard was that the town could do better when it comes to housing options for seniors and aging in the town. And so to go along with that, again, we come back to zoning and what are you allowing as far as housing types in your zoning bylaw? Is that supporting the type of housing that seniors want and need? So that's a strategy of just looking at that. What are we supporting? Maybe what are we not supporting? Where are there barriers? And that kind of thing.
Okay.
So that's that first strategy. Number two is, again, this idea of private-public type partnerships, whether that's formal or informal, and having these kinds of conversations that's on a case-by-case basis of, let's be the intermediary between someone who wants to see their property developed and a developer that maybe wants to do affordable senior housing or something like that, and being kind of the go-between and saying, let's make this happen as a town. So again, just another role that you can fill as a town. And then, of course, there are state and federal programs that can bring money to the table for affordable senior housing. So you have things like CDBG, you have rural development through USDA. I haven't seen this a lot around here, but federal low-income housing tax credit programs, that tends to support fairly large developments for some reason. I don't know if that's a feature, like an intentional feature of the program, or whether it's just what it takes to get, but I can look into that a little bit more. And then I listed Community Preservation Act here, but again, I think we understand where we're kind of putting that as far as something in the plan. So anything else you want to see in that section as far as senior housing?
Yeah,
No, I think
you need
that-
to pay attention to it.
Yeah, we need to offer it to people. I think I'm a very big proponent of that. It's available, especially for the residents that are selling their houses, or they don't have the income, maybe to have that option there.
Like you said, like a development of a 50-plus
50-plus
community or
community,
something
right.
like that.
Yeah.
I mean, that would be phenomenal. But again, you need the developer to want to come in and put it together.
Right.
So we have to be able to offer something to bring them here, to help us, to offer that to our community.
Right.
So-
Yep. And it always, I mean, we have some conversations with developers, and it honestly goes a really long way. If you as a town, you know, if you have a property owner that wants to do something with a property, and you as a town reach out to a developer that you've seen do something you like in another town and say, hey, we have this property, it's ready to go, do you want to have this conversation? And, you know, that's a way that you can be successful as a town in getting the kinds of things that you want. So, okay, so the very last thing, and then we'll wrap, but I wanted to come back to this idea of there being a clear tension between the preservation of open space and housing development, right? So, again, going back to some of what we heard in the survey, some of what we heard in the workshop, that there would be, at least among some residents, a desire to see more open space preserved at the trade-off of having denser housing in key locations, right? And so we weren't really sure whether this should go in something like the land use chapter or the housing chapter, because development doesn't necessarily have to be housing. It can be commercial development, it can be industrial development. But one of the tools we wanted to highlight, and this is the only strategy we really have here, is that because you're dealing with a lot of private property owners and private property rights, you know, if you had the money, you could try to just buy the properties and preserve them. That's probably not a viable option in a lot of cases. There is something called, and maybe you're familiar with this, a transfer of development rights that you can implement. And so I know EEA specifically calls this out as something that they will fund if you want to explore developing a bylaw of this nature. But essentially what it is you work with property owners in the town to say you have an area that you know is a priority preservation area, but you don't want to remove the property rights that people have from developing those properties. You can set up a transfer that says, if you're a developer that wants to build in, say, the town center, the village center, West Warren Village Center, say, but density only allows, I'm making this up, but you can only get 3 units on this property.
Yeah.
If we're going to set up this transfer so you can actually purchase the development rights from this priority preservation area, and as a result, you'll get an additional 3 units, right? And then
Okay.
that property in the priority preservation area is preserved into perpetuity. So it can never be developed after that. So it gets written it's either a deed restriction or I think it can look a number of different ways. I think that's a really common setup. But that is an option that we've started to actually explore with some other towns, kind of wrestling with the same thing. And I know in PVPC's territory, they've worked on this with several, rural small towns, and have been successful in helping to negotiate some of those transfers. But especially in cases where you don't have the funds to just go out and buy property rights, or if you always have the option of also just asking property owners, will you put an easement on this property into perpetuity? And some people will do that and just say, I don't want this land developed, so I'm willing to put it under easement or under a land trust, or put a restriction on development. But for those that maybe want to preserve the value of those property rights, something like this can provide a mechanism whereby they can get that value, while also accomplishing some of the goals of the town.
Yeah.
So we're not really sure if this should stay in, or first of all, is that something that is of interest as a potential strategy, whether it's a land use strategy or a housing strategy?
So yeah, it's like, obviously I don't have any experience. I understand I understand the strategy, the idea behind it. I just don't know. I mean, I guess because I've never seen it in So, okay, well, we allowed this, and this, so they bought this or gave us access where
Yeah.
we put this land in a trust or whatever, where the public now has access to that property. It's like,
But-
it sounds
But
good,
how much land are we
but
talking
what,
here?
yeah, where are
Yeah,
we,
yeah,
where's the
exactly.
trade-off?
Right.
What are we allowing in order to get that?
Yep.
And that's kinda.
That's part of
Yeah.
the puzzle.
And
Yeah,
the best
right.
practices in your other towns, what are they doing? I'm gonna look to you. What are they doing?
We don't have any.
Oh,
yet.
okay.
Yeah,
Yet.
this is just
Yeah.
Western, well, obviously, you see the towns
Yeah,
listed.
these look
Yeah.
like
Hadley,
bigger-
East Hampton, Hatfield, Westfield, those are all, like, right around the Connecticut
But-
River.
Yeah,
you
we
know.
did just apply for some EEA grant funds to do this in one of our towns, or to explore it. Yeah, so there are a couple of the towns here that have done it. I think, again, what we could go forward with is, this is a pretty simple articulation of just what the mechanism is.
Yeah.
And so we can write it up in the chapter and provide a more detailed sort of case study that supports that section of the chapter. And if you look at it and it's like, "Ugh, I'm not sure that'll work here," then we throw it
That's
out.
fair
There's
enough.
no, but yeah, I'd hate for that to, I guess, leave the table as a potential options, because that the dealing
No,
with
we can leave it.
Yeah, I don't think it's gonna hurt to leave it.
Again, it's just having
it's
options.
new to us. It would
Yep,
be new
it's
to
new-
a
it's new to-
lot of
yeah,
communities, obviously. Very few people have played with this so far, this tool, or pulled this lever, as
Yep.
we say. And again, I would hate to restrict us. In the master plan, I feel like we need to let everybody know we're open. Come to us and we'll talk, and we have options. We have
Yeah.
all kinds of things that we can help
Yeah.
to help develop our town, yet at the same time preserve our town. And this could be a very useful tool at some
Yeah.
point.
I think you definitely, there are always limited options when it comes to preserving
Yeah.
existing open space, especially when there's existing development rights that go along with that land, and so,
Yeah.
it's just one of those tools that can maybe help you get there.
I think we leave it just, like you said, so I wouldn't want to go away from it. Not necessarily saying we will use it right off, but I think there could be a time and a place where this becomes something valuable, especially if we get some more development, and then down the road, 10 years down the road, all of a sudden, hey, this might work. I'm glad we have this.
Yeah, and it's also, I think, along with some of that conversation around, if you're going to start looking at zoning for and potentially allowing higher density in your village centers to hopefully preserve some open space,
Yeah.
Along with something like doing a 40R zoning, this gives you some control too over what that process looks like.
Yeah, I think we all agree.
Yeah.
Leave it.
So, great. That's it.
Well, so that's all?
Sorry, that was maybe more painful than it needed to be. But, yeah, if you think of anything else,
Okay.
feel free to just shoot me.
Senior housing, 1 second. Does that include subsidized?
Which
The senior housing you were talking about?
yeah. So that's certainly a piece of that.
A lot of towns are doing individual subsidized. Is that on the table, or like single units?
Yeah, I mean,
Instead of like giant apartment complexes.
Yeah, I mean, certainly that could be on the table. Are you talking more through like voucher programs, or?
I think no, just private developers are building, like in North Brookfield has some, other towns have them. Instead of a big giant box type,
Yeah. So more single family style,
Single or
and
double, I think.
yeah, and some
But
of the
they're
units
subsidized,
are
yeah.
set aside as affordable units that are subsidized.
Yeah, it has, a yard and everything.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely part of that.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
We all set?
All
Move
set.
on?
Yeah.
All right. thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate
And
it.
again-
Obviously, a lot of work here, so.
Two.
All right, moving on. Let's do a quick rundown through our other grant programs so we can wrap this meeting up relatively quick.
Yeah, that'd be
MVP and hazard mitigation. John, any remaining tasks we know?
So the MVP is all complete.
Yep.
Hazard mitigation and adjustments submitted to both FEMA and NEMA.
Okay.
Are waiting for feedback on that to finalize. And
Okay.
There's some feedback that was received from another application from a different town that's gonna be put into Warren's and updated, so yeah, it's still under review.
Okay.
Okay, open space and recreation planning, Lucy Stone updates, anything? All right, so we'll move on from there. Mass One Stop for Growth updates, FY '23 Prospect Street, FY '24 Otis Street, master plan, and FY '25 application. What do you got for us, John?
I'll just start with the application, so that's been submitted, we know that the zoning
Yeah.
update as well as Pulaski Street engineering design. We should hear back probably in the fall.
Okay.
Yeah, so hopefully.
Guys, thank you.
Thanks, guys.
And then 23 and 24 are ongoing.
Yeah.
Yeah, throughout the construction.
23's pretty much
23
closed out.
yeah, that was pretty well done, right?
Okay, okay. Is it completely closed up?
I believe so, yeah,
Okay.
23 is, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
And 24 is nearing completion as well.
Yep.
So yeah, updates on that.
Okay. Complete Streets, I did have a conversation on that with somebody who was gonna help me we're revising it a little bit based upon another community's, their mission statement essentially, and kind of tweaking ours to kind of fit. I didn't like the feel of it at first, so we're still reviewing, working on that. Green communities, you have anything?
So we submitted an application to the state to do some weatherization here, some weatherization at the senior center, as well as installing a new HVAC unit at the senior center. And we're waiting to hear back from them. I would imagine sometime in September-ish, we should know whether or not we were awarded it. It's about a $200,000 grant.
That's awesome.
Very good.
Mhm.
Wrights Mill EDA updates, anything?
So, yep, we had I had a meeting with the team from Weston and Sampson last week. They are moving forward with their the study. They are going to be having a discussion with the selectmen potentially on August 1st about some dates for September to have another public meeting about the ongoing master recovery plan there. I would imagine we'd be having a discussion, another public discussion in September with the selectmen on that.
Okay. Good. Very good. Let's see, Warren ADA transition plan pending application for Mass Office of Disabilities. Okay, I saw the report on that.
So, yep, so we got the report, the study has been completed, and it's out for review for all the department heads and the public. And on, I believe on August 22nd, Jim Mazik, Mike Kennedy, and I don't know if Connor's coming out from your office, will be presenting the final version of it that has been released officially to the selectmen. And we'll also be taking questions and answers, or we'll be taking questions and answering your questions at the meeting too. We'll be having a public presentation on that on the 22nd.
The 22nd. Okay. Excellent. Let's see. Community development block grants. Where are we at? See, accounts, program, income, miscellaneous funds. There's more money rolling in on that.
So,
No.
a couple of topics. So I'll just start off with 21. So we had talked about reprogramming some of the remaining 21 funds into some kind of senior center improvements. Right now, we're just trying to make sure that we're not going to be supplementing any funds. I don't believe we are, but I just want to confirm that before we do so.
Okay.
I've been talking with Jim with that. But I guess what I would say is, in the event that the state does determine that that's actually supplanting the funds that you guys have already kind of committed to that, is there anything that, other additional work at the senior center that could be used with those funds that no other funds have been committed to yet?
So, we do have some improvements within the kitchen that
Okay.
need to be done.
Okay.
So I don't know if we
Yeah,
could maybe
okay.
have a discussion about that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And
Equipment.
we have no, on some of the work in the kitchen, there's no committed funds yet.
Okay.
The work is needed.
Okay, sure.
What kind of work are they looking at to do?
Well, at some point, they're gonna need new flooring, they're gonna need some painting in there, possibly, I don't know, do they buy equipment, or
I
is
think they're
equipment?
in the, we can, I mean, you can purchase equipment through
Good.
block grants, so that could be a very, yeah,
Yep.
use the well, additional discussions on that. I just
Sure.
need to confirm that before,
Yep.
but just kind of want to put it out there for
So
discussion.
if for some reason the first commitment can't happen, then maybe we can have another meeting
Exactly.
about something else.
Right, exactly. Just wanted to put that out there.
There's always projects.
There's always, yeah, right.
Absolutely, yeah.
So we'll be able to spend it, which is good. Then going on to 22-23, so the School Street project is advancing pretty well, yeah.
Yeah.
I think they're working on the sidewalks on Otis Street at this point.
Yeah.
The sidewalks have been completed on School Street, so that's good. I know there's some few minor things that still need to be completed regarding the sidewalks and that, which will take place over the next couple weeks. And then I think final paving in conjunction with the work on Richardson and Prospect will happen probably towards early fall.
Yeah,
Something-
sometime in the fall.
Right.
Definitely in the fall,
So,
so.
yeah.
Okay.
So that's moving forward. And then on a separate activity, the Town Common Design Project. So I have that out, the RFQ is out.
Okay.
I've received something like 25, requests. So
Oh,
there's a ton
nice.
of firms that are interested out there.
Good.
That right now is planned to be due, proposals are due on the 9th of August.
Okay.
So a couple weeks. And once those come in, we'll set up a time, committee to review and select a firm. You
Yeah.
guys will be well aware of that.
Yeah.
So wait till that point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's where we are with that.
All right. Obviously, we still need to work on a community development strategy. You know,
Table that the next meeting?
Yeah, I
Okay.
think, well, yeah, it's something
Okay.
we need to be as a
Yeah.
full group to
Yes, we do.
discuss and
Okay.
possibly have a little more time.
Yeah. We don't have any more time?
So, no, we're a little out. Okay, is any miscellaneous or new business anybody wants to discuss? No?
No?
One thing I just wanted to mention,
Yeah.
as CMRPC, we initiated an income survey for Hillside Ave.
All right.
Just to set up for a potential future project
Good.
and an application, so that's underway.
Nice.
Yeah,
Excellent.
Yeah, so just throwing that out
Yeah,
there.
try to finish that neighborhood.
Yeah,
That'd be
exactly.
great.
Exactly.
Okay. Anything else, guys? No? All right, next meeting, let's, we still gonna stick with, let's see, hold on. It's August, right? So, goodness.
The third,
Okay, so I would have to say, so the 28th is, I'm out of town, so I'm not gonna be, I don't know if you guys, the 21st, that's available, I don't know if that's
I'm available.
the 21st. You be good with the 21st?
Jim, are you available the 21st?
Yep.
Okay.
Jim's available the 21st, we're good. Yes, so, John, I guess let
21st.
everybody know that 21st, we're gonna schedule that.
Yep.
So, okay, let's see. So, do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I have a motion, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I'm talking way too much.
All in
today.
favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Meeting adjourned. 6:50.